Did you touch the thermostat? Did you turn it up?
Well, of course not. Did somebody fiddle with the thermostat?
Yes, it's 85 degrees.
85? Do you have any idea how much even a few degrees can impact the gas bill?
Of course I do. It's unthinkable.
Dad, Kurt, what's going on in here? Why is it so hot?
Someone fiddled with the thermostat.
What?
Who would do that?
What do you think you're doing?
It's roasting in here.
I like to sleep with my window open.
Hey, kid. Are you allowed to touch the thermostat at your mom's house?
Duh.
And that's a clip from Daddy's Home 2. I'm delighted to say that one of its stars, John Lithgow, joins us on the programme. Hello, John. How are you?
Very well. How are you, Simon?
I'm very good. Good afternoon. I'm not going to say Happy Christmas because I refuse to go down that line, even though we're talking about a Christmas movie. It just seems a little bit soon.
It's a little early, yes, but, well, they presume that it'll be such a smash hit, it'll sail
right?
through Christmas.
So you must have been in your Christmas gear and singing Do They Know It's Christmas, what, in the middle
in
of
the April,
summer?
April and May. We brought in the spring season in red and green.
All right. Get us up to speed. Immerse us in this world,
All
John.
right. There was a film called Daddy's Home, which was about a stepdad played by Will Ferrell and a biological dad, Mark Wahlberg, who comes back onto the scene and becomes his rival for the affections of the children and even the wife. And it was a big hit, so they decided to figure out a premise for a good sequel. And they decided to bring the next generation of dads home for Christmas. And that's Mel Gibson is Mark Wahlberg's dad, and Will Ferrell's dad is me.
Yeah. What kind of a guy are you?
Just what kind of a guy am I?
Yes.
Well, my character is over-the-top, sloppy sentimental, a sort of soft-love dad who just adores his son, and his son adores him. The interesting wrinkle is that he is a postman who thinks his job is the most exciting job anyone could have and never stops talking about it. It's sort of the comedy of tedium. He clears every room except for his son, who thinks everything he says is incredibly exciting. That sort of characterizes me. And my completely opposite number is Mel Gibson, who is a sort of hard-knuckle, tough love dad, actually a kind of abandoning dad.
We kind of believe him when he makes jokes, brash, masculine, chauvinistic jokes. We kind of, it's kind of like a self-parody, would you say?
Yes,
a little bit there?
It's actually a cool choice for Mel to have made, because he does make ruthless fun of himself in the role.
I would quite like to have seen you in his role.
Well, it would have been interesting. There was actually a review, a not very positive review, that made exactly that suggestion. I would have been game for that.
So when you're on set with Mark Wahlberg and Will Ferrell and Mel Gibson, if you're funny people, are you allowed to ad-lib at all? Are you quite tied to the script? Or
the script is good and solid and written by the director, Sean Anders, and his co-writer, John Morris, and it's cracking good. But it's part of their work process to just allow us to step outside the lines all the time. And of course, we're working with Will and Mark, who had done the first film and had sort of created a process with Sean. That was very much the mode. It's happening a lot in movies. I've also worked with Judd Apatow, who has kind of created the new movie comedy mode, and that's how he works completely. There is a script, and you do the scripted scene, but then it's almost presumed that they leave the cameras on. You do it again. He throws out suggestions from off camera. Before you know it, you're improvising the entire scene.
Wow.
And a year later, you see the film, and a good 40% of it, of the dialogue, was captured in improvisation, even though it hews to the shape of a scene.
that must be quite thrilling. I would think for an actor such as yourself.
It's very exciting for an actor, and it does depend on the director creating exactly the right conditions for it. But that was our mode on this film too. Not quite to that extent, but they're wonderful improvisers. And my character, as I've said, we made the decision to make him talk all the time.
Oh my goodness, do you talk all the time?
And what you see is only a fraction of what I actually spoke. Whenever they needed sort of background noise, they would just sort of, it's like I had a switch on my back. He would turn me on and I would just babble on.
So that improv thing, you think is comparatively new?
I
in a movie?
I had not worked this way until I worked with Judd, and now it seems to be very, and I've worked with some pretty expert people in this mode, Jack Black and Paul Rudd and Leslie Mann. It's now part of the skill set.
So when you were doing, because I was thinking, because you did the only other Christmas movie I can think of yours was Santa Claus the movie with Dudley Moore.
Yeah.
Was there any comparison at all? Other than
No
his Christmas?
comparison at all. That was very much in another era and another mode altogether. It's just, I don't know how much you're aware of Curb Your Enthusiasm.
Yes, very much so, of course.
But that's an improvised. Again, Larry David created this improv mode.
In relation to this movie, I had one attack of liberal angst.
Yes.
In there's a scene where the kid is playing with a hunting rifle.
Yes.
It was a halting moment, and I stopped and I thought, oh, is this funny? Can I laugh at this? What did you think?
I think everybody has that reaction. It's been a year of horrors in this area. It's a tricky thing doing comedy because the zeitgeist can change immediately. Think of how the zeitgeist has changed with the whole issue of sexual harassment. That's just the nature of comedy. Timing is everything, and timing can go wrong.
When you watched it back, you didn't think, oh, I'm not quite sure. You were...
I had somewhat your reaction, but I didn't have that reaction when we were shooting it. It's very, very interesting.
So I'm sitting opposite you, John. I'm thinking of all the films that I've seen you in over the years, and some listeners asked some terrific questions. But the question, and this is a film show, so I should really restrict myself to films.
Whatever you want to ask.
However, Winston Churchill, I have to mention Winston Churchill because your performance in The Crown was so extraordinary that it just blew everybody away. And it seemed like an amazing piece of casting. When you got that gig, or when you got asked to, I don't know whether you auditioned, I don't know how that works. Were you blown away by that?
Yeah, it came as a phone call from my agent, and with an offer. They wanted me to do this. And I was completely blindsided by it, astonished. I didn't know the project existed. I never would have dreamed I'd be cast as Winston Churchill. In fact, I'd played Franklin Roosevelt once with Bob Hoskins.
Bob Hoskins playing
Yes.
Churchill. You didn't look at him and think, I could do that?
No, I looked at him and said I could never do that.
I wasn't Michael Caine Stalin.
Yeah, right. It was crazy, but yes, I was very excited. The offer came from Peter Morgan and Stephen Daldry, who are this wonderful tandem of writer and director. I knew Stephen slightly, but I'd never worked with him and always wanted to. I just thought, well, they must know something. I got together with Stephen after I'd said yes, and I said, why me? And the first thing he said was, well, Churchill's mother was American, which is true. I think in a larger sense, they thought, I can't speak for them, but Churchill himself was sui generis, even among Englishmen. There's nobody like Churchill, and in a way, they almost needed a surprising piece of casting. As I say, that's my only rationale after the fact.
The scene that you did with where Churchill is with Graham Sutherland and you're talking about painting is, I think, the greatest scene in that series. I mean, it's not talked about because it's not got a member of the royal family in it, but I thought that was an astonishing piece of acting.
And I got to work with Stephen Delane, who's one of my favorite actors ever to work with and to watch. It was typical of Morgan that he found little cracks, little off-ramps in history that he could pursue and turn into extraordinary and revealing scenes and episodes, like the Big Smoke episode, spinning that into something that tells us so much about Churchill. And yet, I had never even heard of the Big Smoke. It's such an ingenious series. I have to tell you, to come here to London. This is my first time here since being in The Crown. And to hear an Englishman tell me that I'd done a good job almost makes me want to weep with pride. Thank you.
Well, it's an absolute pleasure. I mean, I thought it was an astonishing piece of casting, and that scene was a great success. So I'm happy to make you weep, John.
Just look at me.
And I'm just looking at your back catalogue, if you like, which this conversation about The Crown comes into, but Third Rock from the Sun, Interstellar, King Lear, Garp, Terms of Endearment, Dexter, the pastor who said we couldn't dance in Footloose, all these roles. You have taken such a huge variety of roles. What is it that you're looking for when a script comes through? Is it something surprising? Is it something that's going to take you somewhere that you haven't been before?
Well, there's also all sorts of different reasons to take a job, but you're right. Being surprised is the most delightful thing of all. I just described the surprise at being asked to do The Crown. It would be wonderful if I could calculate everything, but actors don't get to choose as much as you would think. But in my dreams, everything I do is as different as possible from what I just did, just so that I'm trying to surprise an audience, let alone myself.
Some listeners' questions to you, John. Steve Clark, how does it feel to be the only actor to have played Winston Churchill and Yoda?
Well, I find a good deal of similarity between the two, don't you?
Just explain where the Yoda came from.
John Madden cast me as Yoda in the radio version of Empire Strikes Back, way back in, I think, 1982. He had Mark Hamill, and he had Billy D. Williams and Anthony Daniels, but Frank Oz chose not to be Yoda on radio. So he was beside himself. He couldn't find Yoda. He was directing me in a play at the time and described his problem. And I said, "Oh, impatient is he?" And he cast me on the spot.
Daniel Hebert, I bet you haven't been asked about this for a long time. The Adventures of Buckaroo Banzai Across the Eighth Dimension was bizarre, glorious, baffling, and really good fun in equal measure. It's developed a very decent cult reputation since. What are your feelings on that?
Oh, it was a fantastic experience. It is a completely lunatic film. It doesn't exactly stand the test of time, but I do urge people to discover it or rediscover it. I played Lord John Wharfen, who had taken over the body of an Italian physicist named Emilio Lizardo in the 1930s. And it was shot in the present day, and he was a crazy combination of alien and human.
Diana Whitmill is making the same point about the range of roles that you take on, but she says, what is harder to succeed in, comedy, emotional hard hitters, or dark roles? Then she says, hidden agenda. I think comedy is much tougher, and I get very cross with, oh, well, it's only comedy kind of comments.
Well, I like the questioner. She's very smart. You frequently see funny people doing dramatic roles, but you rarely see dramatic actors succeed big time in comic roles. It's wonderful to cross over between the two. I'm just game for anything. I'm glad when people think of me for funny things.
Marcel Noy, I still consider your season on Dexter as peak Dexter in terms of a series hero needing a strong antagonist. Why do I still get chills when I think of you saying, hello, Dexter Morgan?
Yes, that goes on my little list of lucky lines. You get a few of those.
It's not much of a line, though, unless you make it work.
Yeah, well, it was the culmination of about 10 episodes of Dexter. All that time, Dexter and my character, Arthur Mitchell, had been playing this curious psychological chess game without Arthur Mitchell ever knowing that Dexter had his number. People had been waiting for that line for about 3 months.
Is it Broadway next?
It is. Yes, I have a solo show that I've been doing for about 9 years. I've even done it here at the National, only on 2 Monday nights. It's called Stories by Heart, and it's kind of an autobiographical meditation on storytelling in which I do a solo performance of 2 fantastic short stories which lend themselves to the stage, a P.G. Wodehouse story and a Ring Lardner American story.
And was it your father who told you this story?
That's right. He read from a big fat book of stories to me and my siblings when we were kids, and I used the same book to read to him when he was an old man, which is kind of the premise of the evening.
You should come back and do a tour, a proper tour.
I think I would. Having done it on Broadway, I'll think it'll be a saleable quantity.
John Lithgow, pleasure to have you on the show. Thank you very much for your time.
Such a pleasure. Thank you, Simon.